Hello all my Kinvians and welcome to a new episode of Discovering Torchwood. Today the episode I'm going to be talking about is They Keep Killing Suzie. And indeed they do, or at least near the end of this episode. Spoilers. I gave you the warning at the beginning of the episode. But anyway, I have so many thoughts about this episode, so let's get right into it with my favorite parts, starting with Detective Swanson, or I guess it's Detective Kathy Swanson. And I said this in the reaction video, but I really hope she makes some return appearances, even if it's just as a supporting character, like not a main character or whatever it is, but I really like her. She has a good personality about her, and I can really see her just not really being a foil to Torchwood, but I don't know, just working with them in certain situations. And I would just love to see more of her in general. The fact that she's gorgeous doesn't hurt any either. But moving on from there, I know, typical guy. But my second favorite part of this episode is actually something really stupid, admittedly, but it's when we see Torchwood like smeared on the wall in blood. I don't know if they were actually making this reference, but in my mind it's a reference to the movie It, where this movie's been out for decades now, so spoiler alert, I guess, but at one point one of the people commits suicide and writes It on the wall, or I guess it was like the side of the bathtub or whatever, and writes out It in blood. I don't know, that reference just came to mind for me, and I just like that. It's a thing for me. I like Stephen King movies, I like Stephen King books. But anyway, moving on from there, my third favorite part of this episode is that Gwen is acting like Gwen again. Thank God. And in fact, the only real reference to the affair that takes place in this episode at all is when Suzie asks Gwen if she has, did she say shagged, or just, well, if she's hooked up with Owen. And that was literally the only reference. Other than that, like, Gwen wasn't sort of pining over Owen or any of that annoying crap from the previous episode, and I loved that. She came back to the Gwen that I loved from the onset of this show. It does bring to mind a bit of a question as to, like, where is Reese this entire time? It feels like the last time we actually saw even the slightest glimpse of Reese was the episode where at the end, you know, she starts the affair. I don't know, hopefully he'll appear again sometime later, but that's besides the point. Moving on, my next favorite part of this episode is the nicknames that Ianto gives to the glove and the knife. And you know, just because they're adorable and, you know, kind of hilarious in their adorableness, but the Risen Mitten, and the life knife. I don't know, it's fun. I know it's a stupid favorite to have, but I kind of hope that that's a continuing trend. It most likely won't be, but I would like it if Ianto sort of becomes the person with the go-to, okay, we're gonna call this. And he just comes up with an adorable, goofy, and kind of stupid nickname. But anyway, moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode was just quite simply the return of Suzie. I mean, you know, despite what happens in the episode, I was glad to see more of the character, because I know I said, I believe it was in the first episode of Discovering Torchwood, that I wanted to learn more about her, that I wish we had gotten more time with her. And that still stands true overall, but just the fact that we did get more of her in this episode, most likely never to return again. I don't know, because of one thing they say at the end of the episode that I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit. But again, just the fact that we got to see more of Suzie, the character, and I mean the actress that plays her did a great job in this episode. So yeah, so definitely a big thumbs up from me as far as favorites for this episode. My next favorite is when Gwen and Suzie are bonding. Both before and after we basically find out that Suzie knows what's going on, or she has some knowledge of what's happening here. But it's just those bonding moments, it's part of what, again, really makes me wish we had gotten more of Suzie, or that she had stuck around for another episode or maybe two before getting killed off, as opposed to, just in the first episode of the show. But that's just me. Just overall, the bonding that they experience and getting to see that up until it gets really dark with the hole in the back of Gwen's head thing. I really enjoyed that. Now, my next favorite part of this episode, as cringy as, well, it's not cringy, but as dark as it is, admittedly, the whole thing about essentially Gwen's getting shot in the head very slowly, and I mean, she references the headache all the way back when she goes to the club with Owen and Jack, and I mean, she doesn't really reference it much after that, up until the point where she starts to truly feel the pain of the gunshot. But just the idea of that. It's nothing that they really portrayed other than just, the fake blood on the back of Gwen's head. But that allows your mind to just sort of recreate what's going on to Gwen's head in your mind. And that just makes it even more gruesome and hideous in a way. So, again, a very dark favorite, but another definite favorite for this episode. Now, my final favorite part of this episode, and it just made me, I don't think I said this on the reaction, but inwardly I was thinking, finally! But Ianto is clearly on the rebound now, because he wasn't really moping around like he was before when it, in reference to his, not his ex necessarily, but his girlfriend who died. And very adamant to get things going with Jack, so go Ianto. But yes, those are my favorite parts of the episode. I'll just go ahead and say before I get into my annoyances, if you feel there are any others that you feel should have been included, let me know what they are. I have my reasons for not having more favorites, and you're about to find out why. My first annoyance, and it's definitely the biggest overall, and I would say it kind of weaves into all the other annoyances. I'd say there's two major annoyances that weave into all the others. But the first of which is that Suzie's plan is so ridiculously and illogically convoluted that after watching the episode twice now and trying to string everything together, it still doesn't make sense. I guess it's entirely possible that she had been planning that for 2 years, I guess, but she supposedly had been giving the guy retcon for 2 years, and did they even have the knife and the gauntlet at that point? Or I'm sorry, the glove for over 2 years? That just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like they were going through essentially trials or later versions of trials at the beginning of the show, so it doesn't make sense to me that she would have been able to come up with this huge convoluted plan 2 years before the first episode takes place and have all of this security in place and have this certain special way to unlock it, which I'll get to in just a second, and just the plan doesn't make any logical sense at all. And I know they kind of had to go... Well, they didn't even have to go with it that way. But I'll save that for my overall thoughts. Don't want to get too fired up, otherwise I'll just ramble even more than I usually do. But, moving on from there, my second annoyance with this episode was the lockdown and the book. Now, I can... The word activated trigger for the lockdown, I'll give them that. I'll give them that, even though it's definitely part of my big number one, how stupidly convoluted the plan is. But you just out of nowhere, Tosh figures out that, hey, if words triggered it, maybe numbers unlock it. What? So it's the ISBN that that's so stupid. I don't know. And the thing is, it wouldn't be a bad idea if there was some logical path to getting there, other than if words activate the lockdown, maybe numbers will unlock it. That is not a logical path. That is a leap. That is logically jumping the shark, I guess you could say. Okay, again, moving on before I lose my temper. And we kind of get into the last three are basically a different point in and of themselves, and I think you'll be able to figure out what it is. But my next annoyance is, how does Owen know how long Gwen has? There is no indication, there's no measurement shown as to how much energy is flowing from Gwen to Suzie. Like, I mean, they give us like the visual representation, but there's no measurements taken. All we know is that, the connection is still live. How does he know how long Gwen has? Like, down to minutes. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway. My fourth annoyance with this episode was when it came to breaking the connection. Now, destroying the gauntlet, totally okay with that. I think there would have been a faster, more efficient way to have done it than to shoot it with a gun, considering all the things they have at the Torchwood labs, but, again, that would mean beside the point. When it came to breaking the connection, Suzie gets shot multiple times and doesn't die. And that's, given what was going on, I'll take that. I'll take that. The fact that she takes multiple gunshots like Jack, but doesn't die, okay. But I know this is insanely dark of me, but if you want to kill someone, like, immediately, you shoot them in the head. And it would have made sense considering she shot Jack in the head, so why didn't he shoot her in the head? And the fact that she probably could have gotten up anyway, or the fact that she still would have been alive, would have just sort of solidified, okay, there has to be another way to kill her. But no! He keeps shooting her in the body. And it... Again, out of all those times, okay, first shot, fine, I'll give him that. Second shot, maybe. But then after that, he just keeps shooting her in the body, knowing she's not dying, and he doesn't aim for the head. It's so annoying! I think you all are getting a glimpse of what I think about this episode now. But I guess I actually did have one more annoyance, but now I'm sort of second guessing it. But I'll leave it in here anyway, just to see if you all can think of any sort of logical sense or point out where I am just not making sense in this annoyance. But they were able to bring Suzie back to life using the glove and the knife. Now, they stabbed her through the chest pretty deeply with the knife. So, since the gunshot wound was transferred to Gwen, and therefore Gwen was slowly getting shot in the head, wouldn't that have also meant that the stab that her body incurred also would have transferred to Gwen? Again, or maybe it only would have transferred things that happened before she died the first time? I don't know. But then at the same time, after getting that huge knife plunged pretty deeply into the chest, I don't know that, you would heal that quick. It would take a little bit more time than the span of a day, I guess. Maybe a day. But yeah, so those are my annoyances with this episode, and I'll be hitting on them again, definitely, as we move forward and we get into my overall thoughts of the episode. But as always, please do let me know your own favorites and your own annoyances for this episode. Let me know if you think my annoyances are too nitpicky, or if I might have missed anything that was even more annoying to you. Because I'm sure I could probably pick out one or two more, but I chose to ignore them. Or did I? I don't know. Anyway, moving on, I do have a question for this episode, and it has to do with Ianto being on the Rebound. And it's a legitimate question. What is with the stopwatch metaphors? There are a lot of things you can do with the stopwatch. I mean, other than timing how long they can do it, or do other things, I don't understand the metaphors, or the implications, or the innuendo. It doesn't make sense to me. Is that something like, is that sort of an innuendo over in the UK? It's like, a stopwatch being something sexual? I don't know. But if so, please let me know, because I'm incredibly confused by that. And I'm kind of scared to even look it up, to be completely honest. Just because I don't really want to know what I might find. But if there is, like, something pre-established as far as innuendo or slang when it comes to a stopwatch, please let me know. Because, again, it confuses the crap out of me. But, moving on from there, I actually did have a track of the episode. The one that I almost picked, admittedly, was the rock music that was playing at the club. And it ended up being okay, but when it really comes down to it, in my mind, the end track of the song, like the very last song that's playing after Suzie is finally dead, Gwen is saved. Just that was a really good track. It was absolutely beautiful. And if you only watch the reaction on YouTube, I probably cut that entire section out because of copywriting. But it really was just an absolutely beautiful track. So yeah, that is definitely, again, don't know the name of it, but that is the track of the episode. If you do know the track, let me know what it is. Now, moving on from there, I do have, as always, more than, well, it kind of feels like more than always with certain shows, but several quotes for this particular episode. The first of which really got me on on second viewing, and I didn't pay too much mind to it, again, when I saw it the first time when I did the reaction video. But when the first time Gwen complains about her headache at the club, and Suzie says, That's the glove, Gwen. It gets inside your mind. And just that knowledge that's foreshadowing to, you know, how essentially Gwen is slowly getting shot in the head. And I think that line is absolutely brilliant. Because, again, you know, on one hand, it's kind of cryptic the first time you watch it, but then the second time you're like, oh my god, she really did know from the beginning. And so, yeah, that's just such a good line, in my opinion. The second quote of the episode is very simple. It's when Jack says, Torchwood, inside of the jail cell area. Or the holding cells. And whenever he says Torchwood, obviously, the Max guy starts against the prison, against the cell door. But just because of the fun that Jack was having with that, I couldn't not have it be a quote of this episode. And now my final quote for this episode comes from none other than Ianto. And it's actually the very last line of the entire episode. And it's after he says, you know, he's going to put a lock on it to make sure she doesn't get up walking again. And, you know, Jack says, oh, no worries, the resurrection days are over. And Ianto says, I wouldn't be too sure. That's the thing about gloves, sir. They come in pairs. Dun, dun, dun! Which is very true. So, whatever this darkness is that Suzie kept referring to, I wonder if maybe it's the original owner of this gauntlet, or, I don't know, something along those lines, but maybe in this season, at some point, the other gauntlet will emerge, and that's when the darkness, whatever it may be, will come to be a factor in the show, which I don't think it has many episodes left this season. But, okay, so those are all my quotes of the episode. You know, as usual, if you have any of your own, definitely let me know what they are. Now, as for a theory revolving around this episode, and this is another thing that I am legitimately intrigued about, is even though, you know, most likely Susie's gone permanently, unless they decide to bring her back again for some reason. I was really surprised when they had when Suzie just killed her father. But then the way she talks about him led me to think about a few things, and especially when it was either the scene before or a few scenes before that, Susie's referring to the song playing on the radio and how her mother used to sing it. So my theory is that Susie's father killed her mother. Again, that's just my theory, but it's really one of the only things that makes me imagine why she would have done that. Just taking things in the episode into context. I mean, she could have hated him for completely different reasons, but I don't know, if it's ever somewhat revisited, I would really like to know if that information is ever revealed. Regardless of whether Suzie ever comes back or not, and I'm sure she's pretty sure she probably won't. But okay, all of that out of the way, time to get into my final thoughts about this episode. While it did have some positive elements, again, you know, bringing Suzie back for a little bit, getting to know her a little bit more, the return of Gwen not being super annoying and just pining over Owen. The logic of this episode honestly ruined it for me, and I know that can be a dangerous thing to rely on, especially when it comes to sci-fi shows, and in a lot of ways, you know, like Doctor Who doesn't always make sense. I can assume, you know, Torchwood isn't always going to make sense. But most of the time, there is at least some logic behind them. And even in Doctor Who's sort of like most convoluted plots, I think, There have been some bad ones. But even in the most convoluted plots, there's been a logical progression toward it. Or, like, the logical progression is shown later. But in this episode, they just throw logic out the door, and we get all kinds of, again, just a horribly, stupidly convoluted plot. Or, well, Susie's plot, her plan to resurrect herself and have a guy go crazy 3 months after she might die. I'm not going to ramble about all that again, but basically, just, as much as I want to like this episode, there's too much about it that annoys me, that it makes me unable to really enjoy this episode, sadly. I mean, if I ever do watch it again, it'll probably be with Jill if she wants to give Torchwood a try. But as it stands, yeah, I can't see myself rewatching this episode. Well, obviously I watched it twice so I could, get ready for the review, but not for just casual reasons. This episode just, it unfortunately, I would say it's unfortunately probably my biggest disappointment of an episode so far when it comes to Torchwood. I'm sure that others will probably disappoint me here or there, but yeah, as much as I hate to say it, this one was a stinker for me. It had really good elements, but the bad just overrode it for me. Now, I'd love to hear what you all have to say about this episode in the comments down below. I mean, again, this was such a hard episode for me to really wrap my mind around and to really decide where I stand on it. But for me, it's a thumbs down. But if any of you do really enjoy this episode, or if you also dislike it, but maybe for different reasons, absolutely let me know in the comments down below. Or, we can talk about it through Messenger or over Twitter or wherever you want to talk about it. It can be fun. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, moving on from there, it's time to get into the next episode of Discovering Torchwood. And that episode is going to be on random shoes, which is appropriately a very random name. But until next time, everyone, I am Papa Ken, and I will see you on the next episode. Alonzi!